there's a lot of wrestlers that had addiction problems and went to rehab or whatever. And just, that was it. Eddie talked about it. That became part of his life. And Eddie had this very unique ability to connect through the TV to the people.
Chavo, such a pleasure to be chatting with you.
Thanks, man. Thanks for having me, Chris, on the show, the infamous Chris show.
I feel like I should start off by saying, "Ooh, Chavo."
Dude, that is so funny because when that first came out and they brought that to me, Kevin Dunn brought that to me, that song, I was kind of like, well, I don't know. Is this all right? Is it good? But since that, I mean, everybody still to this day will say, "Ooh, Chavo." I'll be driving down the road and I'll hear, "Ooh, Chavo."
That's so funny. Well, yeah. It's a hit, right? It's that thing that, like, when you hear that, you instantly know who's going to come through the curtain.
Exactly.
And there's a handful of theme songs that have that. I can't say 1, 2 in real life without saying, "Is this on?" Like Triple H's theme.
Yeah, or sure. We hear Broken Glass. It's always,
of course,
it's always Stone Cold, right?
Anytime I'm at a restaurant and someone drops a glass, I'm like, Stone Cold's here.
Yeah, exactly, right. You're gonna get a 3, or anytime we used to see 316, like we'd joke about that in WCW, and we'd see 316, and I'd say, check it out. And he'd look 316, and we'd give him like a stunner.
Do you know the woman that sang "Ooh, Chavo"?
Yeah, that's Liz Pena. Liz Pena worked for WWE for a long time as she was backstage doing a bunch of things. So that's the girl. Then she worked with us on Lucha Underground, but now she's involved with some stuff with $7, I believe.
Oh wow! Well, it's a pretty good company to be in with then.
Yeah, really. I still keep in touch with her. She's awesome. But I always say that's the Chavo girl. Oh no way! And so that's her claim to fame.
So for anybody who's just listening to this, Chavo doesn't just sound good because he has a good microphone. Chavo's a fellow podcaster. So congratulations to you on that.
Yeah, man. Thanks. I'm just breaking in a little bit. I have, a few episodes under my belt and more to come. I got a lot more actually recorded, but Suplexes and Cervezas with Chavo Guerrero Jr. and jump on it, and a little different, a little fun, and check it out.
Well, you've got two, as we record this right now, you've had 2 pretty great guests. You started off with The Undertaker. Yep. It's pretty much all downhill after you have The Undertaker, I feel like.
Right. And
then the Good Brothers right after that.
Yeah, for sure. And then I just released today Josh Barnett, part 1 of 2 series, UFC champion Josh Barnett, good friend of mine, MMA champion, UFC champion, but also pro wrestler, So if you listen to the podcast, we went about 3 hours talking at his house because we were drinking his bourbon and drinking my cervezas, my Los Guerreros lagers. So by the end of the second podcast, we're slurred a little bit. It's pretty funny.
I'm surprised that didn't happen with the Good Brothers.
With the Good Brothers, it did a little bit, but we were on Zoom. So
those guys like to drink.
Those are my boys, man. I love those guys. Those guys, I helped break in Gallows. So still to the day, they figured it out. They figured out just having fun, you know what I mean? And they're just having a good time. And that's what wrestling's about. That's what wrestling was for so long. And I feel that it's almost being lost to now. It's almost like these guys they're playing wrestling at times, and they're not actually having fun. Like it's a lifestyle, I don't know. Maybe that's just my opinion.
That's a really interesting thing to dive into, because there's this whole concept now in 2020 that we all know this is fake. Kayfabe is dead. Where do you sit on that?
Okay. So being a wrestler, it's not fake. That's the taboo word. Entertainment, absolutely 100%. But we get in that ring, dude, we hit hard in hard places. And if I don't like you, I'm going to kick you in the face. And you'll see how fake it is. I may lay down for you at the end, but you're going to work your ass off for it. So we always say it's entertainment. We hit hard in safe places, but the F word, I just can't, still to this day, can't stand it. Being brought up in the business. Sure. And knowing these guys and how tough they actually were. One thing about wrestling that we kind of figured out was that it's entertainment. Any dollar you make for any sport is not a sport anymore. It's entertainment. If people aren't watching, that sport's not around. I use the WNBA sometimes. WNBA, these women are incredible athletes. They're so good. Each one of them can outschool me. And I played a lot of basketball in my day, and they're incredible. But if they don't have the eyes on it, some of these girls on the off season, they have to go to Europe to pay bills. So that just shows you right there, the best MMA fighters in the world aren't necessarily the richest. Conor McGregor, great MMA fighter. Is he the best? Not. I guess he's been kind of, proven that he's not right now. He's a great one. Yeah, sure. But he's such a great entertainer that people pay money to see him. That's what we figured out in wrestling. We figured out that, hey, there's no money really in doing it for real. When you can tell a story, that's what I'm kind of getting at there. Entertainment.
Yeah, but the idea of kayfabe being dead in the world that we're living in now, I mean, when you got into the business, was very different.
Yeah, for sure. Definitely. I compare it to magic. So Chris Angel, all these other guys,
David Blaine,
Copperfield, they're going to say it's illusions, but they're not going to tell you this isn't real. They're going to say it's an illusion. So at the same time, when you're watching magic, we all know that it's an illusion. It's not real, right? But when you see Chris Angel float, you're like, whoa, what's going on? How is he doing that? Oh my God. And they got you. But the second you see that string, you're like, okay, change the channel. Okay, whatever. And it's the same in wrestling. They know that it's entertainment, that they're not really, they're fighting. They're out putting on a show. And once we can get those people to go, I think that's not real, but those guys are really hitting. Then I got them. But the second that they see the string, which is like the pro wrestling punch or something that's corny, that doesn't really look real, then people change the channel. So we always say when in wrestling, don't let them see the string ever. They want to lose themselves. And they're watching a movie. I want to lose myself in this movie. But the second I see that boom mic above you, that takes me right out of the scene. Or if I see like something that's not period correct, let's say, a car, it's a 1960s movie and I see a 1985 car in the background, way in the background. I'm like, oh, dude, you lost me. So it's the same thing. Don't ever let them see that string. And that's the name of the game.
So the idea with your podcast thus far is it's a lot of road stories. And I think that nobody tells stories better in the ring or on the podcast than you do. And you have so many stories to tell.
Yeah, you know what? That's kind of why I started this podcast. I've been getting asked for years to start a podcast, and I'm like, I don't want to. I mean, everybody's doing it right now, and I always want to do something different and not kind of follow in the same path. And this was probably 3, 4, 5 years ago that people were asking me, and I'm like, no, I'm just not going to do it. And then speaking about Luke Gallows, I was at his house doing, I think it was the Taka Shop Mania. And, or maybe right before that, I went out there with my wife about a month before, and him, his wife, Mike Knox and Haley, his wife, we all kind of all just partied our butts off for all the COVID, the quarantine, but we were all in the same house and we just did. It was awesome. But they were like, dude, now you're in Hollywood. You know people in Hollywood. You know everybody in wrestling. You got stories that you have been around for so long, from different generations. You build things. You're working out, all these different things. And I'm like, yeah, I guess maybe I should start a podcast. They're like, you have to. Like, just some of the stories you're telling us. You know Ric Flair intimately, and the stories about your dad and Ric Flair and the way he broke in, different things. And I was like, yeah, I guess maybe you have your own beer out. You can have, all these different things. They convinced me. I jumped on the train, and there you go, man. When I do something, I don't do it half-ass. I do it like 100%. So that's where I'm at, doing it.
Well, I've noticed that in everything you do in your life, not just in the ring, but like I see you promoting this beer, and I'm like, you're not gonna create a beer if it's not something that you're all the way in on. That's something that you've got to like be drinking yourself.
100%. Anything I do is full bore. Like I'm really big proponent in saying that what you do is you're putting your name on anything you do, whether I'm washing my own car or if I'm, building a house, I'm putting my name on it. So if I can't do it like a pro or better than a pro, then I'll just hire a pro. I won't do it. But
Yeah.
usually I can figure it out and figure out how to do it like a pro. So my beer, for instance, I teamed up with this brewery called Aloster Brewery, Aloster Brewing Company in West Covina, California. And they had this incredible master brewer that was kind of the first to do a lot of the home brewing in the 1980s. So he's been around. So I was tasting their beers. I'm like, wow, these are incredible. These are great. I'm a beer drinker. I love it.
Me too.
So then they ended up, we went back and forth about a year. We came up with this really awesome recipe, and I was really involved in trying it and different things. And there you go. So, Los Guerreros Mexican Lager from Lhasa Brewing Company. It's I'll put it up against any Mexican lager out there. I don't care if it's Dos Equis, Corona, craft brew. It doesn't matter. This thing, in my opinion, and everybody else's other opinion, that it's pretty damn good.
Where can I find it around here?
So go to either alasabrewingcompany.com. They can send it to you in California, or Craft Beer Kings. Craft Beer Kings is a very big, it's not as big as like a Bevmo, but it's a big, retail outlet, I want to say.
Yeah, sure.
So they'll, you could buy it there. Depending, it sells out all the time. That's the thing with the craft brew. What's cool about it is that it does sell out. What sucks about it is that it sells out.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
Do you feel like growing up with the last name Guerrero, you had only one career path that you could possibly follow?
I've been asked that question a lot, and I think that's all we ever wanted to do, me and Eddie. We grew up with a wrestling ring in our backyard. So literally we learned to walk in a wrestling ring, and I can't remember ever not being involved in wrestling. So it wasn't like they said, you have to be a wrestler, but it's like that was a family business back then. We, lived, breathed, ate, slept wrestling.
Yeah.
So it's kind of, I can't say that they pushed me into it because they didn't, but that's all we ever wanted to do. We'd just be like them.
Yeah. So who was your father to you when you were a kid? And who did your father end up becoming to you as you got older?
So my dad, Chavo Guerrero Sr., Chavo Classic, as they knew him in WWE. My grandfather, Gory, was the original wrestler. He ended up meeting my grandmother because she went to the wrestling matches to see her brother, who was a wrestler, and they ended up meeting. So I'm kind of third generation on both sides of the family, which is
wow.
Yeah. So then my grandfather had my father, my Uncle Mondo, and my Uncle Hector, and then 18 years later had Eddie. We'd always joke, me and Eddie would joke, because we were both mistakes. He was the late mistake of my grandfather, and I was the early mistake of my dad. So even though Eddie was technically my uncle, we were 3 years different, so we grew up as brothers our entire lives. But my dad, man, growing up was my idol. That period, I wanted to be just like him. Anything he did, I just wanted to be just like him. To have a superhero type dad, was pretty cool. I always won the argument, like, well, my dad can beat your dad up. I always won that one.
Yeah, I would guess so.
Yeah. But you get older and you start realizing that your father, your family, they're human. They're human, and you start seeing flaws and chinks in the armor. So as I got older, it helped me kind of see my dad as a human, as a person, and you see his flaws and mistakes and things that I didn't want to replicate, so he was really good about that, saying, look, don't do these mistakes that I've done, live as I say, not as I do.
Was there ever a point, like, obviously you grew up in wrestling, you got into it very young. Was there ever a point where you went, maybe this isn't for me?
No, never. That's all I did my entire life. Amateur wrestling, working out since I was, 12 years old. Any sport I did, whatever, was just for wrestling. And I never once said, I don't want to be wrestler. I was always, I want to be wrestling. That's it. And then, doing it for almost 20 straight years, and then leaving WWE when I did, I never didn't want to not be a wrestler. I think I just needed a break and didn't like the direction it was going. And there's times that, you need to step away. And I did. And then, kind of went back to wrestling a little bit. And then morphed from wrestling into Hollywood, which is still kind of doing what I'm doing is wrestling, but it's doing it in a Hollywood sense.
Yeah.
So I'm still involved in it. I'm just not, getting punched in the face every day.
Yeah, for those people who might not know, you're on Glow now, Gorgeous Ladies of Wrestling. And you also do a bunch of stuff behind the scenes for them.
Yeah. Anything wrestling goes through me on that show. But such a great show to work for. And we're in the middle of shooting season 4 right now, but with COVID, it shut down. So I was kind of just sitting at home. I was actually doing a whole nother show too. I was doing Heels that from Stars. That was the Stephen Amell show. It's a brand new series coming out. I was actually doing that one also, and that shut down. Since that has come back to film, but I have another very big project on the horizon here that I'm getting ready to go film that I will be dropping later once I can start talking about
this is so you've got your, like, I think people from the outside looking in go, Chavo does a little bit of stuff with Glow, and of course we saw him on Lucha Underground, but that was still wrestling. No, you're in this Hollywood world.
That's all I do now, man. All I do is Hollywood stuff and podcasts. I build houses in now and then, drink some beer. But yeah, that's it, man. Like basically that's it. Here and there I'll do an appearance, a wrestling appearance or something like that, but for the most part, I now make a living, in the Screen Actors Guild and coordinating shows and TV shows and movies.
That's exciting. Congratulations to you on that, because
thanks, man. Appreciate it.
I think that most people just see Rock, Cena, and Batista doing that, not knowing that there's people like you that are also doing this.
Yeah, man. And I had a really good compliment from Eric Bischoff, my ex-boss, of course, at WCW. And I still, keep in touch with him, and we do a couple different projects here and there, But I was on the Jericho cruise last year, and I was sitting there having a beer with Eric, and Eric goes, "Man," he goes, "you're doing it right." I go, "What do you mean?" He goes, "You have some others that are in front of the camera doing stuff, and that's awesome, but that's very short-lived. You can only do it a certain amount of time." He goes, "You're sitting there behind the camera creating." He goes, "You can do that forever till you're 90, So I was like, I guess maybe you're right. And he asked me, are you tired of, being in front of the camera? And I said, no, you know what? I did that. I did it for so long. I love creating. I love being involved and being behind the camera with a director and seeing our vision come to life. I really like that. I'm not saying that I'll never be in front of the camera. You're always, once a wrestler, you're always a wrestler, but I really like creating, man. I want to end up directing. I want to do all that kind of stuff. I've already produced a couple of different things. Lucha Underground, of course, I was a producer on, but Dark Side of the Ring, those 2 episodes with Chris Benoit and Eddie, I was a supervising producer on that. So I've kind of dipped my foot into producing too. So in Hollywood, you kind of got to be a jack of all trades to kind of make it a little bit. So.
Right. So what has the wrestling world taught you that you've now been able to carry over to the Hollywood world?
Oh God, I couldn't do it without what I learned in wrestling. The stuff that I learned from Vince McMahon, Kevin Dunn, and so many people at WWE got me my foot into the door as in Lucha Underground, being a producer on that. And that morphed into Glow. And then that being behind the camera morphed into a couple other things. So it just kind of just started snowballing. But really it started from learning camera and TV from Vince.
But what's exciting about this for me is I'm watching you do this kind of later in your career. And I think there's a lot of people who are watching this or listening to this right now that are going, oh man, I'm 33 and I guess I'm going to have to stay with this job for the rest of my life. You've like reinvented yourself.
Yeah, man. They say that you're supposed to have at least 3 different careers in your life from what I hear, so I guess I'm probably on my 2nd career here. But it's, I was a late bloomer, man. I was always a late bloomer. I didn't really, get strong and tough and whatever till later in life. Some people do it at 17, 18. Man, it took me long until I really didn't start wrestling professionally full time till I was 25. That's late for a 3rd generation pro wrestler.
Yeah.
And everything just kind of came later for me. So I'm, 49, pushing 50 here very soon. And I'm in the best shape of my life. I feel great. People tell me I look 48.
You look great.
Yeah, man. So I'm still just, pushing. So I'm just a late bloomer, man. And for me to be doing this later in my career, it's still kind of early in my career, to be honest.
Do you feel better now that you're not in the ring very often at all anymore now? You were obviously younger when you were with WWE, but you're on the road, in the ring all the time. Do you feel like you're in better shape now than when you were in WWE?
Yeah, for sure. You know, in WWE, you're expected to, at least then, and I don't know how it is now. I'm sure it's probably very similar, but you're expected to perform at such a high level, 250 plus days a year at all times. I was always hurt. I was never not hurt. So it just depended how hurt I was.
Mm.
Really the only times I wasn't hurt is when I got hurt and I went home for 4 months and came back, and then I was kind of healed and then right back to being hurt again. So now, I still wrestle. I'm always in the ring doing something, whether it's, training actors or, doing extra scenes or, doing a stunt doubling. I'm always still in the ring doing stuff. So it's not like I'm not in the ring. I'm just not doing it, for a big major company and wrestling like that as much. So I still keep, involved in it, because if you don't use it, you lose it. But that's why I still keep my, my wits, my senses, my reflexes going strong at all times. I still go out and sprint and do agility drills and stuff. So it's like, you just got to stay on top of it.
Well, and you build your workouts into your day, which I think is a really important thing. In fact, we are doing this interview right now in between workouts. You were like, this is my free time. I'm going to work out either before or after. Well,
I did cardio, and then I'm doing this podcast, and then I'm going back to go lift some weights.
Man, you're a beast.
You know what? Just got to stay on top of it, man. It's like, what else am I going to do? Sit on the couch? I'm going to either do that or play golf. So,
that's it. Yeah. Do you feel like the version that we saw of you in WWE was a more accurate depiction of who you are versus who we saw in WCW or maybe a little bit later on in Lucha?
Yeah, no, for sure. WWE, they let you definitely explore your character and refine it and evolve it. And then you're wrestling so much, I was so wrestling, at the pinnacle of my career was really there. WCW, I was still learning and still kind of trying to find that spot. And then now, WWE, you're just, you hit that stride, and I was just going and going and going. So that was awesome. But you can only do that for so long. And it's either, do you bow out, kind of when you're still good, or I didn't want to be that guy that was still coming in and still working. You're like, well, he's missed a step. I didn't want that.
Yeah. Look, not only are you Chavo Classic's son, but you share the same name as him. Mm-hmm. So at what point in your career do you feel like you were able to step out and go, no, I'm my own man here?
That once you start getting real confident of yourself in the ring, wrestling is an art form. It took me, I'm a third generation pro wrestler with a wrestling in my backyard and lived and breathed wrestling my entire life. And it took me 3 years, at least 3 years, wrestling at, almost 300 matches a year. So you're looking at, say, more like 5 years, not 3, about 5 years. So you're looking at 1,500 matches before I really felt like I knew what I was doing.
Wow.
And then another 5 years till I had people like Ric Flair, Stone Cold Steve Austin coming up to me going, hey, man, great match. Man, you guys tore it down tonight. That's 10 years in. That's 3,000 matches. Wrestling at the highest level of wrestling. That's how long it takes to master. I mean, you never really master it, but to get really good at this art, it's very, very tough. And, guys like Kurt Angle that came in and, were good in 2 years. It's unheard of. It's unheard of. Like, he's just a phenom. People like that, it's like, it's insane. And even he will tell you, I just did a commercial with him and Mike Tyson, Vitor Belfort, a couple others doing
Smart Cups.
For Smart Cups, yeah.
I just saw that.
Yeah. So we just did that. And Kurt he even told me, he goes, you and Eddie led us. You led us, the first time that the first 3 months that me and Benoit were wrestling you guys. And I'm like, really? I go, we felt like you guys were leading us. He's like, no, you were leading us. So, and then he goes, I really didn't hit his stride till he says about 5 years in. And he was already WWE champion.
Yeah. This is that whole idea that Malcolm Gladwell talks about of the 10,000 hours. It's like you needed to put in those 10,000 hours until you were able to master this.
It's true. It really is. My grandfather used to tell us that you have to do a move 1,000 times before you can do it seamlessly in a match without thinking about it. And just feel like just the reaction, just to react to it. Like, so, and I was like, oh man, that's a lot of times. But I know what he's talking about now, because now that I've done things that many times, there's times that I was wrestling that I was just reacting so fast, and then leading somebody else in the ring and leading the referee and playing to, the camera without thinking about it. And next thing you know, like I was like, wow, how the heck did we do that? And then hung over, so it's like, oh man, it just came second nature. I didn't even have to think about it anymore. Now it's a little bit different because I'm a little rusty, but being in that ring, I wouldn't think about it. It wasn't like, okay, should I do this? I just knew. I knew what the match needed. I knew what the fans wanted. I knew what was going to make my opponent look good and make me look good.
It's second nature to you.
Yeah.
So if we look at your career, 10 years in, when you really started hitting your stride, which matches would it have been? Which feud would it have been?
Probably right after Los Guerreros, when me and Eddie were doing his stuff. That was such a great time in my life, but a great learning experience also, to be able to tag with Eddie and just see how seamlessly and flawless that we could move together without even thinking about it, but then going off on our own. So I would have to say probably my feud with Rey Mysterio, that's when really started getting that stride. And then going on to CM Punk, going on to Chris Benoit, going on to people like that, that stride really started coming, it took a while. It takes a while. Just because you start wrestling a new guy and you're at that point, you still have to be able to gel with him.
Yeah.
It took me and Chris, a month or so before we really started. I mean, we felt like people thought we were having good matches, but he and I knew that we were such perfectionists that we could do better. And then it would come to the point to where we'd get out of the ring and we would just go like, man, that was awesome. Oh, dude, that was so great, So it takes time, man.
Did you feel like, you were obviously tagging with Eddie. Did you feel like when you guys did split up and do your own thing, because you were together as a tag team, because you share the same last name, that there were comparisons like you to Eddie, Eddie to you?
Yeah, well, for sure. We're always compared to each other. My father always got people hating on him, saying, well, you'll never be as good as your father. Eddie got it. You'll never be as good as your brothers. I got it. You'll never be as good as Eddie. So Eddie once told me, he goes, hey man, just be you. He goes, I've heard it. I won't be as good as him. You won't be as good as him. You can't. They're just one of that person. Yeah. He says, just be you. Be the best Chavo Guerrero. And that really kind of helped me. Like, all right, you know what? Kind of screw everybody else. Go out there and just do your thing.
Yeah. With the legacy that you have in your family, with the legacy of just the Guerrero name, what was the conversation like when they pitched Kerwin White to you?
There was no conversation. I got off the plane in Japan, and it was I came to Raw, and I had Vince McMahon looks at me and goes, well, hello, Kerwin. And I'm like, okay, what is this? So what's going on? Well, today you're going to denounce your Hispanic heritage, and you're going to become a white guy. And I was like, all right, I have two options. You either say no and possibly go back on the back burner for a while or get fired, or you say, all right, let's do it. And at the time the political climate was different. And I literally told Vince, I go, I had a meeting with him. I said, look, if we're going to do this, let's do it right. I'm supposed to be a brown guy playing a white guy, saying, this is how you white guys are. And they're saying no. So I had the Hispanics hating me because I was denouncing my Mexican heritage. I had the whites because I was making fun of them. And they're like, that's not how we dress. I'm like, oh, yes, you do. And then I was saying, if it's not white, it's not right. And, I had Caucasians going, that's not the way we are. So that's exactly how you are, so I had everybody hate me, and a true heel wants everybody to hate them. And then I told Vince, I go, look, at the end of the day, I want to come out on a white sheet. And he was like, oh yes, I love it. Now, of course, we never end up doing that. That's got too risque, a little too racist for a network.
Like a KKK sheet?
I wanted to. Absolutely.
Wow.
I wanted to come out. I was like, I grew up in the time of wrestling that the more heat the better. I wanted to fight my way back to the dressing room every night. I wanted to have to sneak out the back window. I wanted to be in the streets and people yell, "We hate you," because that's heat. That's what I wanted. I didn't want them going, "Hey, look, there's Chavo. Hey, what's up?" An autograph. I want them to look at me and go, "God, we hate you." And still to this day, and I was a heel. That's what you have to do as a heel.
Yeah, yeah.
Still to this day, I'll have people on Instagram, social media contact me and say, "You know what? I really hated you when I was younger. When you made Rey Mysterio quit, I hated you." And they're like, "I get it now." And I'm like, "Well, thank you. That I was doing my job." And they said, "I understand now." But at the time, they're like, I hated you so much." I'm like, "Good." That's what I wanted. I wanted people to hate me. That was my job. So, it was, if I was going to do it, I was going to do 100%. Like I'd do anything. So, we never got to that point, but I was ready. I would have.
How long did you end up? I mean, it was pretty short lived, but how long were you Kerwin White?
Not long, man. It was probably about 6 months. I was Kerwin White until the day Eddie died. When
Yeah.
Eddie died, we were in Minneapolis for a super show, a Raw and SmackDown show, because the whole crew was going overseas to Europe that night, I think, or maybe the next morning. And after Eddie passed, Vince, Triple H, Shawn Michaels all came to me at Eddie's hotel room, and we're in the hallway, and they're like, "What do I do?" Vince goes, "Do I cancel the show?" And I'm like, "Absolutely not. Eddie would never have wanted you to cancel the show. The show must go on. We have
So they
to
left
do
this
show."
decision to you.
Well, I can't say that I made the final decision. They wanted my opinion on it.
Wow.
You know, I that and whether he would have taken it or not, it's up to him. It's his show. But I told him, "No, you don't do that. Absolutely not. Whether you do a tribute show or whatever, the show goes on, and I want to wrestle." And he was like, "All right." And I came out that night as Chavo Guerrero with blonde hair.
Wow. How difficult was it to wrestle that match that night?
I was guided. I felt that like Eddie was there with me, and I was guided through it. Then I had JBL wanting to wrestle me and put me over. So he's a guy that loved Eddie. I loved Eddie. We all did. So the fans were behind you. It was like I couldn't do anything wrong that night. I look back at that match. It was just super special, man. Super special. Just getting in that ring and just performing. And Mick Foley, I think maybe a couple weeks afterwards, he wasn't even with the company, but when I saw him somewhere, he goes, "Chavo," he goes, "when you climbed up for that frog splash at the end of that match and you hit that frog splash 1, 2, 3," he goes, "that was such a special moment." And I was like, wow. I was like, dude, I was just, you're on autopilot, man.
And I mean, that really changed the direction of your character for sure. You went from Kerwin White to instantly, not just Chavo, but like almost this, like, it was like you were paying tribute to Eddie and to your family name as well.
Yeah, for sure, man. That's when I adopted, using some of Eddie's moves. Before I would do them as, as a dig, like, to get heat.
Yeah.
Anytime, anybody else does if you do a pedigree, the first time people think is they're going to think Triple H. If you do a people's elbow, the way Rock does, you're going to think it's a Rock. RKO, Randy Orton. Took him a while to not have the diamond cutter, as DDP, but you can think of RKO, right? But so you don't want to think, you don't want to do the move and have them think of another wrestler, but in this case with Eddie's moves, the Three Amigos and the Frog Splash, I want them chanting Eddie. Still to this day, they'll do it. Every match I have, I get an Eddie chant. Every single match.
Why do you think it is, like, there's been lots of wrestlers that have left us, but Eddie has left this like legacy. What do you think it is about him that people still 15 plus years later are still talking about him?
Great question. Eddie was an incredible performer. Sure, we get it. Great wrestler. Awesome. But the thing that Eddie had is that Eddie was a two-dimensional character. And when he was just Eddie Guerrero, guy in a lowrider coming out, okay, whatever, doing his Hispanic type thing. But then when Eddie got fired from the WWE for addiction problems and lost his wife and, ended up really hit rock bottom, lost his job, lost his family, lost his house, lost everything. He hit rock bottom. And for him to make that comeback, he became this three-dimensional character, this character that people would look at him and wasn't just some wrestler now. And it was like, hey, I'm him. I have those problems too. I have those, and he was very open about it. And even on his promos and stuff, would talk about that. It wasn't like there's a lot of wrestlers that had addiction problems and went to rehab or whatever, and just that was it. Eddie talked about it. That became part of his life, and Eddie had this very unique ability to connect through the TV to the people. He wore his heart on his sleeve, and you saw that. So when Eddie was on camera on TV, you felt his passion. And it's very difficult to do, and not very many people can do that. And I don't know if Eddie could have done it if he didn't have all the stuff that happened that went through him in his life. But that's my opinion why Eddie is still so beloved and remembered.
He's like the most likable bad guy ever. He does every heel thing. He lies, he cheats, he steals. We're not supposed to like him, but it's hard not to like him.
Yeah, man. People saw how good he was, and they just saw the passion that he had for wrestling and for life and for family and for everything, and that resonated through the TV.
Is there anything that Eddie taught you or words that he said that stick with you every single day?
So much, man. So much in and out of the ring. My Christianity for sure. Just every like life lessons, family, wrestling, things that you still remember to this day. Like, he would say, "Hey man, keep going." He goes, I remember one time he and I were tagging and I was upset about something. And he goes, "Look, man," he goes, "I was you." Because when I was tagging with Art Bar and we were Los Gringos Locos in Mexico, he goes, "This guy was more over than me." He goes, "I was weird. I was a second generation pro wrestler, whatever. This guy was getting all the praise." He's like, "Man, I was mad." He goes, "Cream always rises to the top. Just keep going and keep pushing your ability." And from what he said, your brilliance, your charisma, it will come through. And sure enough, it did, whatever. But he was like, "You just stick with it, man." He was like, I know, because I was there.
Yeah. Well, you were so close with Eddie. You were obviously so close as well to Chris Benoit. So close to both of them in their final days and on their final day. Did Eddie's, because he was a family member, did Eddie's hit that much harder than Benoit's?
That's a great question. And I don't know if Eddie's hit harder. He's harder because he was my brother. But, Eddie sometimes had the weight of the world on his shoulders, and he felt that. So when he passed, I was like, okay, like it was almost like, he was called home. When Chris passed, it was just a different story. The circumstances behind that was I'm still struggle with that one to this day. That's still tough. And if you guys saw, Dark Side of the Ring at all and kind of see how it affected us, man, it was so just tragic, the circumstances behind it just was, they were just both different. But man, the thing with Chris is it's something that still bothers me.
Do you think about those texts that he sent you? Because I guess, you were one of the last people that he communicated with, or at least attempted to. Do you think about what those might have meant or what had happened there?
Yeah, I know exactly what happened. I think, I think that he was texting me after everything really happened, after everything went down, after the passing of his, and I'm trying to say it as PC as possible.
Sure.
The passing between his wife and his son. He was texting me going, "Hey, this is how you can find me." I think he texted me probably right before he committed suicide.
So I had his son. I had David on the show earlier in the year. And I feel like it was very therapeutic for him to speak about this, because he's, kept it bottled up. Other than Dark Side of the Ring in this conversation, he hasn't talked about it a lot publicly.
Right.
He's looking to get into wrestling. What do you think about David wanting to follow in his father's footsteps?
I want him to. I would love for him to do that. It's tough because he looks so much like his father, And it's something that, like, man, it sucks for him because he just got played just a raw hand. He didn't do anything wrong, but yet he still suffers from the consequences of his father and the circumstances that are surrounded his death. And it's such a poor guy, man. He still gets it. And, he's probably like me. He just wanted to be a wrestler too. With him, it's something that it's kind of the ball's in his court. If he wants to, he's going to have to, we lived, breathed wrestling. That's all we did. Any job I had was to be a wrestler. I passed the time doing stuff and making some money as a bartender or a waiter or whatever, but it was to be a wrestler. That was it. It wasn't like, oh, I'll see if this happens. No, it was like I was training all the time, still working out, still in the ring, doing stuff like that.
I feel like, unfortunately, it's an uphill battle for him. Number one, obviously, because of the last weekend of his father's life. But number two, Chris Benoit was one of the greatest wrestlers of all time. So he has such huge shoes to fill in terms of his actual wrestling prowess.
Yeah, he'll never fill those shoes. You can't fill shoes of a Chris Benoit, of a Bret Hart, of a Shawn Michaels, of an Eddie Guerrero, of a Rey Mysterio. You just can't. You can just be you. Look at Dominic Mysterio right now coming out. Is he Rey Mysterio? No, but he's kicking butt. He's Dominic. And I tell him the same thing. You just be you. Be you. He's being sheltered right now. He's being, led and protected in WWE. There'll be a time that he won't have that protection around him, that he's going to have to be himself. Just be himself. Be him.
Did you know that Dominic was going to get into the family business, if you will?
Yeah, I saw him, even as a kid, he really loved wrestling, and he did some stuff with us in Lucha Underground. And we saw him training, he was doing the training thing. Where that went, who knows? Sometimes you have all the best intentions and, circumstances happen. But he did it, he kept at it, and the right time, right place. And, Ray was back in WWE. It's perfect.
And I think that he's not going to get as many of the same comparisons to his father because, there's an obvious difference in stature there.
Well, yeah, you got, Rey Mysterio at 5'4". You have Dominic at 6'2" plus. So
yeah,
it's impossible to do Rey Mysterio stuff. If Rey Mysterio was 2 inches taller, he wouldn't have been Rey Mysterio. If he was 2 inches shorter, he had the perfect blend, the perfect combination to be who he was. I always hear the next Rey Mysterio. No, there's one. There's one, and that is it. He's one Rey Mysterio, and he's super special. So now you have his son coming out without a mask. So right now he's going to be a little different right there. So he'll find his way. It took time. When I first started, I was doing the moonsault like my father and doing some of my father's moves. Just be yourself, man. You'll get there.
Yeah, you mentioned Lucha Underground, and I was a huge fan of what you guys did in Lucha Underground. At what point did you realize this thing's officially done? Because it kind of petered out and then never got picked up again. You guys were all in limbo for a while. At what point did you go, yeah, this is done?
Gosh, man, after the first season, I was like, gosh, this thing is incredible, man. I was so happy how we kind of changed. We didn't change wrestling. We changed the direction that we were going in wrestling. We went a direction that nobody had gone before. And still to this day, people use some of the techniques that we used in Lucha Underground, and they're applying them to their shows, which is a great compliment. But man, God, second season was great. It was right away. Third season, man, we took about a year off. I'm like, you can't, take your season off, a few months and come back. I get it. But you just can't do that. You're going to lose people. And then by the fourth season, I started seeing the writing on the wall going, when you get too many billionaires involved in a project, the reason why billionaires are billionaires is because they don't like to spend any of their own money. They like to spend other people's money. So it's like, man, I've just seen how this thing, I was like, man, we have such a great product here, something totally different. It's an hour. We have storylines. We kill, it's TV show. We kill people on TV. You can't kill wrestlers, and we killed them, but it just was, these just so many guys were it was too many chiefs and not enough Indians, you want to say, and I hate that, stereotype, and nothing against
too many cooks in the kitchen.
Yeah, there you go. Nothing against my native brothers, But it's kind of, it kind of was, you got too many bosses, and
Yeah.
they'd, arguing about this, didn't want to argue about this, and, didn't come back at certain times, and people just forget about you real fast. Even though it was a TV show, it was still wrestling. The wrestling fan, you had to, if they would have found something else.
Yeah, it was special though. It was really special, like you said, because it wasn't just a wrestling show. It was a wrestling TV show. I went to a taping,
Right.
and it didn't feel like a wrestling show at the taping. It was like we were audience members, which was so cool.
How amazing was that, right? The taping and like the fans, it was so amazing. Like just that, and it was only 400 people there, if that, 380 plus. But it's just the electricity in there was immense. The fans were so great. There was just such a great part of it, and they all wanted just to be a part of that product.
So if we look at your entire career, can you pick out your favorite match in each stage? So we'll start with WCW.
Gosh, that's so tough. We had so many matches with so many great people. WCW, was it something with me and Eddie? Was it something with me and Ray? Was it something with me and Gregory Helms at the time, Shane Helms, Sugar Shane Helms? Yeah, God, that's tough. I hadn't hit my stride yet, so that's a tough one on that one. But if you start going to WWE,
yeah, we'll go into WWE then. I'm sure it's the same people though.
yeah, but there's so many different people that stood out. Russ and Kane, Undertaker, CM Punk, Eddie. All the top of the top. But I think Eddie and I, when we were kids, we wanted to be the tag team champions of the world. We didn't talk about being the heavyweight champions or the cruiserweight champions. We always pretended that we were the tag team champions, and we would be in the backyard wrestling ring with my dad's and one of his brothers' belts, the tag team belts, and we'd pretend that we were the champions, and role play that back there. So when we became the WWE tag team champions at Madison Square Garden, of all places, Survivor Series, against Rey Mysterio and Edge and Chris Benoit and Kurt Angle, the SmackDown Six, what they used to call us.
Yeah.
That was super special, man. That was something that we kind of achieved that goal. After that, we made other goals. We made other like aspirations that we wanted to be. We wanted to be heavyweight champions. We had to move up and change, and we both achieved that, So I think that was probably the pinnacle. I went different places for sure on that, but just super special was that,
What about, you didn't spend a ton of time in Impact, but do you have any memorable matches there?
Yeah, tagging with Hernandez was fun, man. Impact was tough because I came into a, organization that I thought had one of the best rosters in the world. And I really thought we could compete with WWE. But then when I really saw what Impact was about, and this is Impact then, I don't know Impact now, but back then, Dixie Carter's Impact, it was a play toy for Dixie Carter. It wasn't meant to compete with WWE. So it was very frustrating. We really wanted to do well, and I could see how people like, Frankie Kazarian and Christopher Daniels were disgruntled and frustrated and in the back, because they felt it too. They felt that we could really do something great, and we weren't allowed to. Our hands were tied. So with Impact, man, I don't know. Some stuff with I just had fun tagging with Hernandez.
Okay.
That's good stuff,
Yeah. What about Lucha Underground?
Lucha Underground, man, was cool. I love just being behind the scenes at Lucha Underground. There was a time when I was agenting and I was running around that place, especially the first season. I'd be stretching for my match with headsets on, calling the match and telling the director what the match is going to be and watch this. And then, okay, hold on a second. Take the headsets off, run out to my match, go wrestle, come back sweaty, so put the headphones back on and go right back to agenting.
Wow.
Yeah, man. So that was awesome. Stuff with Ray. I think Ray and my dad was kind of cool when he came in and, hit me with a chair to get me disqualified. And, Dario Cueto would continue the match. And, it was like a loser leave Lucha Underground match. That was, I think, probably the best.
Look at us.
I had a match with Ricochet. He was Prince Puma at the time, and we were just getting into it, and I ended up tearing my hamstring. And so that was like a what if match, and I thought we could have really torn it down. But
look at all the stars that Lucha Underground made. It's mind blowing. I mean, Ricochet and Cage and Sami Callihan, and I mean the list goes on.
Lucha Brothers, Jeff Cobb, Lucha Brothers, Pentagon and Phoenix, guys like Matt Cross, guys like
basically the whole roster.
Yeah, it was incredible.
Thunder Rosa,
yeah. All this, we had so many people there that were just so good and were so raw at the time. I remember getting like Pentagon, Phoenix, and Drago, those guys, and going, "Hey guys, how long have you been wrestling for?" They're like, "Oh, I've been wrestling 10 years." Okay, well, hold on a second. Do you know we're supposed to play that camera right there? And they're like, "No one ever taught us that." I said, "Guys, stop, slow down. The camera is chasing you. Stop. Go to that camera. Make that camera shoot you." I go, "We have the luxury of editing here, and splicing together. You guys go to WWE," and I always talk about that because I know where the pinnacle was of wrestling was. I go, "When you guys make it to WWE, it's live. You have to stop." And I remember having this conversation with Shane Strickland and go, "Dude, you have to tell the camera where to shoot you." And they're like, "Wow, I didn't know," So having a little, and among others, Conan, Vampiro, but having a little bit part in helping those guys refine themselves. I see them now on AEW just killing it, and it's so awesome to see them.
I have to admit, Chavo, as a kid growing up in Canada, my first real exposure to Spanish was through you and Eddie.
Yeah, man. Orale.
I didn't know what Viva La Raza meant, but I said it all the time.
Yeah. It's funny how we got, all these, and it really started in WCW with Conan, and he'd say "Arriba la Raza," which means like translate like raise the race, but we'd say "Viva," like live the race, which means just like in America it'd be like, remember the Alamo or something like, "Viva la France." It's kind of what it means, but for Hispanics. But we'd say that all the time, and we'd have everybody, say "Viva la Raza" or call us beaners or something. It was great. It was awesome.
Hola, Holmes.
Yeah, man, we would do our Spanglish versions, for sure. It was great.
I didn't know what these meant, but I appreciate it because I didn't get, Canada's very multicultural, but I didn't get like a real introduction to that except for you guys. It was really nice to see that. Yeah.
I still to this day, I have people coming up to me, like, other Hispanics, and going, "Chavo, thank you for doing what you did for Hispanics, for our culture. We don't have a lot of people out in sports or in Hollywood or whatever, and we had you guys and Ed, you and Eddie, your family. Thank you for representing us." So when I started getting that, when Eddie started getting that, man, we like had to change our decisions, and we were like not just representing, like making decisions for ourselves. We were kind of making decisions for big following, like a race, in a sense. And so we had to, step back and say, okay, we have to be role models. I didn't plan on being a role model. I just wanted to be a wrestler like my family, but to be a role model and have people look up to you is like, all right, it's a responsibility. It's great, but it's definitely a responsibility.
Well, I mean, I don't feel like you didn't have to be a Mexican wrestler. Like, sure, you were from Mexico, but you didn't have to be a Mexican wrestler. You could have just been Chavo, or we could have given you another wrestling name. How important was it for you to like play into your heritage?
Very, very important. Growing up in first El Paso, but here in Southern California, man, as a kid, I wanted to be a white guy named Mike. I really remember telling my mom, going, "Mom, how come I don't have blue eyes?" But then as I got older and I saw how awesome it was to be, Mexican American, and I embraced it. I really embraced the heritage and the being proud of it. Then I saw my white Caucasian friends, and they say, "Hey, where are you from?" "America." I said, "No, where are you from?" "Oh, well, I think we're German or something. I'm not sure." And I'm like, "What do you mean you're not sure?"
Yeah.
"I'm Mexican, Mexican American. I'm American 100%. And I was born here. I'm like a fourth generation, American, but we still embrace our heritage, where we came from." And they're like, "Oh, wow, I didn't know that," And so I saw how really cool it was to kind of really embrace that heritage. So that was very important to me to represent them, embrace that in wrestling. And still to this day, if you see the stuff that I do, it's still raza, it's still representing them.
Well, it must be easier though. Like not only are you tied to your heritage, but you also speak a different language. I think for someone whose grandparents, great grandparents might be from Ireland or Germany or something, they just don't feel like they have that same connection. You speak Spanish.
Yeah, it's something that my family was very big on continuing, making sure you did it. In my household, my mom and dad, we spoke English, but I get around my grandmother and it was just Spanish, so definitely being introduced, that really, really helped being, bilingual. And I just think that the culture, I loved it. I loved, just the very strong family ties in that. So it's something that I just embraced and still to this day love it.
Do you speak Spanish with your kids?
Not really. My kids are pretty white. they're pretty white. They got the Guerrero last name, but they're blue eyed and, they got the dark hair, but they kind of have the best of both me and my wife. My wife's like an Irish German, but so they're Orange County, these poor guys.
like the Real Housewives of OC.
That's where I live. I live in those cities. I see them around all the time.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, that's kind of funny, right? Yeah, I kind of just migrated South Orange County a little bit, and it just I live in that OC bubble, we call it.
Look, it's been so great catching up with you, chatting with you. I said at the start, but it's so true. You are such an incredible storyteller. And that's what Suplexes and Cervezas is all about. So wherever people are listening to this right now, they can find Suplexes and Cervezas. And man, you've got many more guests on the way.
Oh yeah, man. I got some big ones coming up here. I got a Rey Mysterio in the future. Right now, Josh Barnett Part 1 got released. I won't spoil too many, but I got some good ones in there.
You and Ray is going to be epic.
Oh yeah, man. That's a good one. You can see the video on my Patreon, which is Patreon/Chavo Guerrero. I'm sorry, no, read that. Patreon/Suplexes and Cervezas. That's where I put all the videos on there. But yeah, man, I'm just having fun doing that podcast right now. You guys can check me out on Instagram at Chavo Guerrero Jr, on Twitter at Mex Warrior, and check my beer at Alasa Brewing Company, Los Guerreros Mexican Lager, and Suplexes and Cervezas podcast right now.
I'm a big beer guy, big craft beer guy. Is this a brewery that I could actually go in and like they would serve me a beer?
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, there's not many of those in California.
Well, so no, that one's a great one because they have all their great beers on tap, and they revolve. They revolve seasonal for sure, But yeah, you can go in there first. They have 2 different locations, and one in West Covina, and one's outside of West Covina. But depending on what the COVID restrictions are right now, yeah, you'll be able to go in there and have a coldie. Yeah, they're great, man. Tell them I sent you.
I will. Chavo Guerrero, thank you so much.
Chris, thanks for having me, brother. Appreciate it. And I'll push this on my social media too and push your stuff, man. Thank you, brother.
Appreciate you.
All right, man. God bless. And
thank
Viva
you.
La Raza.
Ooh, Chavo. Thank you for checking out this chat with Chavo Guerrero. I mean, I feel like I could talk to that guy all day. And now I'm going to give you a sneak peek of what my next interview is going to be. There she is. Oh, my gosh.
What is happening, guys?
Oh, so excited to bring Lillian back on the show.
That's right.
You're awesome. Also, congratulations.
Thank you.
Chasing Glory is now on the WWE Network.
That's right.
Oh, my gosh. You're crushing it.
Free version. Free version.
You don't even have to pay for it.
I know. I love it.
So I'm excited for our conversation because we talk about a lot of things.
Hey, never before heard stories, by the way. I
Yeah.
shared a lot with this one because you give a great interview. So thank you so much. Just a great interviewer.
Oh my gosh, that's so kind. Well, subscribe to Lillian's channel. It's linked below, and you'll be seeing this interview next week.